Hi, I'm Amelia and welcome back to my sewing room. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you 5 of my most recent makes which have really got my sojo back up and running again. Hi, so it is winter here, it is rainy, it's pretty miserable weather, I'll be honest, and I'm just not reaching for all of my beautiful dresses, and I've just found myself not knowing what to make. So over Christmas I did enjoy my sewing hobby by just making lots of gifts for other people, but when I came back from our holiday I thought, I really don't know what to make for myself. So I had a long, hard think about what it was that I was reaching for in my wardrobe, what it is that I'm wearing on these soggy, wet school runs, and that got my brain whirring. So with a couple of new fabrics acquired, I have been really busy in my sewing room and my sojo has well and truly returned. So one of the patterns that I've sewn up recently is the lane pants, and that's what I'm wearing today. So you can't see it because it's on the bottom half. I'm just wearing a ready-to-wear jumper on the top. But I'll share some photos with you so you can see what they look like. Now this is the 3rd or 4th time I've made the lane pants pattern. I really like the pattern. I've made a few of the other elastic waisted trouser patterns that are around. I think Tilly and the Buttons have the Savaya pants and Friday Pattern Company has the Saguaro trousers, but for some reason the shape of those didn't really work for me. However, the lane pants did, with a few minor alterations. Now the lane pants pattern has a great size range. All of the patterns I'm sharing today actually have a great size range. I will link them in the description box below, so if you want any more information about sizing and fit and sort of pattern description, fabrics, all of that information, please do click the link below and that will take you to the Pattern Maker's website where you can find all of the information that you desire about these patterns. Or drop me a comment and I'm really happy to answer any questions that you have in the comments box below. So I first made the lane pants in a blue linen fabric, and I found myself turning the waistband over on those quite often when I would wear them. Not so that I could look cool and trendy with all the children that are turning over the waistband of their tracksuit bottoms, but more because it was then sitting in a much more comfortable place on me. So I quite quickly realized that when I made them again, I would need to change the rise and the sort of crotch depth. So that's what I did. The next time I made them, I took about an inch out of the front and back rise, which really helped in terms of just having them sit where I wanted to on my sort of mid-waist. Certainly at the back, I just found that they sat a lot better over my bottom. However, there was still quite a lot of pooling of fabric in my center back. So what I did then was I took about 1 centimeter out of the central back part of the pattern, and that helped to remove some of that excess fabric. I'll show you on the pattern piece because maybe that would help. So here's my pattern piece, and I'll just turn it over so you can see the back. I've taken about 1 centimeter out here, just under an inch I think in the end I took out, and then I've taken 1 centimeter here, and all I did on the front of my pattern was I measured down the centimeter and then I took my French curve ruler and just joined that to the side seam here because that was sitting fine. So just taking that small wedge out of the back and out of the top of the pattern means that it fits a lot better on my curves and over my sway back. I don't know that there's any official term for the adjustment that I made to my trousers. One of my goals for this year is to learn how to fit trousers and to make appropriate adjustments so that I get a pair of trousers that fits me really well. But I just fiddled around with the pattern. It seemed to work. I'm in love with this new pair of lane pants, so I'll call it good. If you know the official terms for what it is that I actually did, do drop them below, but it is a goal of mine to learn more about these things this year. So on with these particular lane pants. I made them in the Fabric Godmother denim that I recently purchased and I shared with you in my previous video, I think. It's this one here. It has a lot more stretch than I realized, which has made for the most comfortable pair of trousers. Now, a few of you were worried about how this might work in terms of the print on a pair of trousers. Oh, it's upside down. There you go. It's worked great. I mean, they are a wide-legged pair of trousers and they're incredibly comfortable and I've been wearing them a lot, so no complaints here. I think the pattern is small enough in terms of a repeat that it doesn't look bad on a pair of trousers, and I just wear it, as you can see today, with a very plain top on the top half, and I love them. They are super comfortable. I've been reaching for them a lot, and yeah, they've got pockets. What more can you ask for in a pair of trousers? Now I know a few people have talked about the sizing of the lane pants coming out incredibly oversized. Now I'll be honest, I have not found that. I went off my measurements, which are a waist of about 30 inches and hips of between 40 and 41 inches, and I sewed up a straight size 12, obviously with making those small adjustments in the rise and the crotch, and I have found them to be perfect. They are not too wide at all. They sit really beautifully with those small amendments, and I'm really happy. I certainly will be sewing up more of the lane pants in the future. I'd love to try them in a sweatshirting material actually, although I have made some sweatshirt jogging sort of trousers, which I'll share with you in a future video, so stay tuned for that. But I'd love to try them in more fabrics, and certainly to make a few more pairs for the summer months, because they're so practical and they'd be getting a lot of wear in my winter wardrobe. Now, another pattern that I have loved making recently was the Tammy Handmade Margo pinafore pattern. That's a mouthful. I made this initially in a burgundy denim from Fabric Godmother, and I was reaching for it so much that I wanted to make another one. I'm just finding it's a great length for jumping on and off a bike. It's really practical because it's quite nice and warm in the denim, and I can put a t-shirt underneath and then a jumper over the top, so it's perfect when you're coming in and out of warm houses and the very, very cold outdoors. Now, I found this Fabric Godmother denim on a D-stash, and I just love these bright colours. I think in the winter I crave bright colours because everything else is just so dark and gloomy. So I bought this Fabric Godmother denim on a D-stash, and it was only a couple of meters that I had, but the Margo pinafore is great because it doesn't take up a lot of fabric at all. Now, the one adjustment I do make to this pattern is to lengthen it by about 2 inches because I don't want it to be mini length, especially jumping on and off bikes. I do want it to come just above my knee, and I'm really happy now with the length of this. I hemmed this one by just doing a double fold, quite a small double fold hem. My other one I hemmed using bias tape to keep it as long as possible, but I think I prefer the length of this one. It's just slightly shorter, and I think that works with the proportions of the dress. Now, it has a very deep v-neck. I know quite a few people have talked about this, but with like a crew neck t-shirt underneath, it's absolutely fine, and I really like the proportions of this deep V to the shorter skirt. I think it works really well. The darts sit on a good place for me, but they are relatively high. It's fine just to be aware of if you're making it yourself. The other thing to be aware of is that because I lengthened it, the shorten and lengthen lines on the patterns actually fall about across the hip measurement. So if you shorten and lengthen it from there, you lose some of that A-line shape, and then you risk it not being quite wide enough over the hip area. Now, thank you very much to Karen from So Little Time who alerted me to that issue. So I did lengthen it just from the hem, and I took it sort of down and continued that A-line shape. I was only lengthening it by a couple of inches, so that was perfect, and it fits beautifully. I love the fit. I made a straight size 10 in this one, which fitted with my measurements, and I absolutely love it. There will be more Tammy Handmade Margo pinafores in my future because I'm reaching for them a lot. The only change I might make in the future or play around with is I do find there's quite a lot of excess fabric at the back. I've talked about my sway back and my bigger bottom. So one thing I might play with on a future version is inserting a side zip here, and then perhaps putting a couple of fish eye darts in the back just to take out a little bit of that volume and make it slightly more fitted. But to be honest, the beauty of this pinafore is that you can just throw it on and go. It's so easy to walk around in and move around in, so it would change the look quite a lot if I did that. So I'm not entirely sure, but that's something I am toying with doing on a future version. I will come back to pinafores because there's another pinafore I've made recently I want to share, but whilst I'm talking about that fabric, I did have some left over, and I didn't want to, throw it away or put it in my stash, because you put it in the stash and it just disappears, doesn't it? And you never see it again. So I thought I'll use it up now. I had another pattern I wanted to try, which was the Tammy Handmade Semi skirt pattern. Now, this is a beautiful A-line, sort of mini skirt, and I love a skirt, I really do. And in the winter, a shorter length is actually practical for me over tights and boots or wellies or whatever it is I'm wearing. It can even go under waterproof trousers if you need it to, just FYI. So that's perfect, especially in the wet weather we've been having. So I did use my remnant. I mean, it can't have been much more than half a meter. It was quite a wide denim, but in any case, I had bits and pieces left over from cutting out the Margo pinafore, and I managed to get a semi skirt out of those remnants, and I love it. I have to say the fabric godmother denim is so beautiful. It washes really well and it just softens up a little bit. So you still get a little bit of that weight and warmth of the denim, but it's soft enough to feel like you can wear it and move around in. And I have bought a couple more pieces of fabric godmother denim, which I will share with you in a future video just because I'm really loving wearing it this winter. So I finished it off with just these plain denim buttons that I got from Prim. They're a bit of a pain to put on with hammers and all sorts. I have to get out all of my husband's tools to sort the buttons out and put them on, but I really like the look that they give, so I'll be doing that again. I put on a lovely label from So Let's Sparkle with Sam, and I absolutely love this skirt. Again, Tammy Handmade's short skirt and dress patterns come up far too short on me. I'm not that confident in showing off that much leg, so I did lengthen this one again by 2 inches, and I did just then do a single fold hem. I think the hem is about 1/2 inch. So I did do a relatively small hem, but followed exactly what the pattern suggested. So one thing I do love about this pattern is the way that it's finished. It's finished with a waistband facing rather than a waistband itself, if that makes sense. So it just sits straight against your skin, which I really, really like with no waistband. But I did notice that there was a bit of gaping between these first 2 buttons. I used the button template that was given with the pattern. And for me, just with a bit of a mum tum, I did find a bit of gaping here. So all that I did was to put a little popper here on the inside, so you can't see it. I made it sure it was invisible from the outside, but it just holds that closed over the tummy, and so there's no risk of gaping between those first 2 buttons. The bottom of it is also beautifully finished. There's lots of instructions about how to make a lovely clean finish on that hem and on that button placket, so it was such a satisfying one to make. So satisfying, in fact, I had to make it again. Now you will notice this is the denim that I got last week from Fabric Godmother. So when I talk about my Sojo returning in force, it really has. Now the lane pants and the semi skirt are both very quick, easy ones to make up. They're perfect for beginners. So I've sewn 2 things this week. That's very unusual for me. Like I said, my Sojo has returned, but they're such lovely, easy patterns and so delightful to make. It's been a joy. But yes, I also sewed up this semi skirt this week in this beautiful Fabric Godmother denim that I purchased last week. So it's come in and been sewn up really quickly because I just love it. Now I did talk about possibly embroidering over the top of the pattern, and I did play around with that a little bit, but the cross stitches in the pattern are so tiny you couldn't even see where I'd embroidered, and I just thought, actually, for all that effort, if it's not going to be seen, there's not a lot of point. So in the end, what I decided to do was put piping around the pockets on the front here, and I really like how that turned out. It was lots of fun to do. I always enjoy putting piping on. I use Gail Doan's beautiful instructions. She makes gorgeous heirloom girls dresses, which I have used her tutorials for those in the past, but I still use them for my own work as well. So used her instructions on how to put piping around corners and to make sure that the seams sit flat at the top and all of that good stuff. But I am so happy with how this one turned out as well. I again used the Prim buttons. I have yet to put the wee popper in here. That's the last thing that I will do. I did also, just because I wanted it to tie in with the pink on the pockets, so I did put in a pink little rosy cheeks label. It says couture, and pink bias binding for the finish on the facing. Now it does say just to overlock it, but I like the look of a bias bound sort of facing, so that's what I've chosen to do. And I like the popper pink on the inside as well as on the outside. But yes, I've yet to put the popper on here, but I used the same adjustments as my first semi skirt, which is just to lengthen it by that 2 inches, and I really like where that sits on me. I'm sure, like with the Margo Pinafore, there will be more semi skirts because they're just so easy to throw on in the winter with a cozy jumper or sweatshirt or blouse even, that I think I'll be making a couple more. I've got some gorgeous black denim, and I've got some offcuts from the next thing that I made as well, which would make a perfect semi skirt. So, you know, if a pattern works, why not make 5, 6, 7 of them? So this is the denim that I thought would make a good semi skirt because it made a beautiful Noah pinafore. So I think I was talking about this one in my last video too, about my plans to make the Noah pinafore, and I have finished this one. Now I've used, you can see here, labels again from So Let's Sparkle with Sam. This one says sparkle added because I was working on this one in her sewing social, so I thought I needed to put on a So Let's Sparkle with Sam label. And this one is from Little Rosy Cheeks, which is a 2026 label. I don't want to get to the end of 2026 and be trying to use up these labels, so I decided right from the get-go this year I'm going to be putting these in my makes when I can. Now again, you'll see I finished the facing with bias binding just because I prefer that finish. So this is finished with a facing which goes all the way down past the zip and into the waistband seam. Now on reflection, I should not have used the denim for the facing. It's made it a lot more sort of stiff perhaps than I would have liked. I mean, it's fine. This is another Fabric Godmother denim. It came in the Dream wardrobe box. I'm not sure if it's a dead stock or something like that. I don't think it's one of their own brand denims, but I'm hoping it will soften up a little bit with washing and with wearing. But I do think my Margo pinafores I've made both times using just a cotton poplin for the facing, not the denim itself. So I probably should have done that, but I was just so excited to cut it out that I didn't really think about that. However, I have to say, this one was such a satisfying one to sew up. I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process of putting in the princess seams. I enjoyed the process of just putting in this zip. I enjoyed the top stitching. I did do more top stitching than it said in the instructions, just because I was making it with quite a more sort of sturdy denim. I put top stitching over these princess seams. I did top stitching again over the princess seams at the back. You won't be able to see it, but I know it's there, and I think it just settles those seams down. They just sit so much more nicely. They sit better. They sit better with that top stitching, and I'm really glad I did that. I also top stitched all the way around and down the zip here, all around the neckline I should say, and down the zip to hold the facing in place, but also just to, again, keep that sitting really nicely when I'm wearing it. I did also add the tab on the back. Now, in the end, the only thing I find with Tilly patterns is that I sit in about 3 different sizes. I'm almost a 2 actually across my shoulders, but I made a size 3 across my shoulders and bust. I graded to a 4 at the waist, and then I graded out to a 5 at the hip. Now the hip measurement is perfect, it fits really well. There is quite a lot of excess fabric at the waist. I'm still not sure if I might go in and just try and take a little bit out here. The one problem is that the only way in and out of this pinafore is through the zip, and because it doesn't go right down into the skirt, you do have to do a bit of a wiggle, and if I take too much more out of the waist, I won't be able to wiggle it on. So I might play around with that a little bit, because I do wish that it had a little bit more waist definition. So when I make it next time, because I did really, really enjoy the process, and I have a sort of thicker wale corduroy that I think would work perfectly for this pattern. I do wonder if I might grade it in slightly around the waist seam, and then if necessary I could put in a side zip here just to give a little bit more wiggle room to get it on and off, because I'm finding at the moment when I do wear this one, I'm drawing this waistband tab all the way in, which does look quite cute. But yes, that's one issue that I found with wearing this one, is I do draw the waistband tab right the way in, and then obviously throughout the day as I'm wriggling around and moving and doing things, it does sort of loosen off a bit. But it's a very comfortable one to wear. I lengthened it, so I didn't make the knee length version, I made slightly shorter than that. I didn't make the mini version. I again added 2 inches to the mini version, and then I finished it off with the same bias binding on the hem that I used for the facing, just because I like pretty insides. The one other thing I would say is I feel like the waist seam sits slightly high on me. Now I found this with the indigo dress as well from Tilly and the Buttons, so I don't know if that's another adjustment that I just need to make when I make Tilly patterns, but I feel like the waist could do with being dropped even by just a centimetre. So I wonder if the next time I make it, I might add a centimetre to the pieces for the bodice. Obviously that's going to affect the zip length, so I'll need to think about that quite carefully before I do it, or just get a slightly longer zip. I'm not sure, but I do feel like I could do with a little bit more room here for the waist seam to sit slightly lower on my waist. However, having said all of that, I really, really enjoyed sewing this up. I would really like to try the pattern again with just making a few of those small adjustments to the fit. I have to say, if I'm being 100% honest, my favourite pinafore pattern that I've ever made has to be the Nina Lee Camden pinafore. I love that pattern. It has that V-neck which sits in a beautiful place. It's not too low, it's not too high. It has a waistband, so it's beautifully fitted at the waist. It has an invisible zip up the back, so that's quite tricky if you're not sort of dexterous enough to get your zip all the way up on your own. That would be my one criticism with that pattern. But in terms of fit, wearability, I love that it comes with a lining. So if you're looking for a pinafore pattern that's fitted, I would try that one. It's princess seamed. I did have to play around with fitting a little bit on that one in terms of making, I think I made a small bust adjustment to that one. I love it though. I reach for my corduroy version of that one all the time. So maybe I need to make another version of the Camden. Not sure. Put your comments below. What would you make again? Would you make another Noah, another Margo, or a Camden pinafore? I'll show you the fabric and then let me know below what you would sew up. So here it is. It's a beautiful wide wale cord that I got from Semi Sunshine. You'll have to excuse the creases. It's been sitting in my fabric drawer. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning. So let me know, what would you make? It's such a similar color to my current Camden pinafore. I feel like I can't really make another one, although I do reach for it and wear it all the time. So perhaps another one would be a good idea. But yeah, should I make another Noah and try that again? Should I make a Margo? Because I love that one. Or should I make another Camden? Let me know below what you think. Thanks so much for watching. You can see how excited I'm getting about my winter makes. It really has been such a delight to get back to sewing over the last 2 weeks. Thank you for all your wonderful comments on my last video as well. It's great to be sharing on YouTube again with you all. Do let me know below which of those patterns you liked the most. I'm so glad to have my Sojo back and I can't wait to share some more makes with you in a future video. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a lovely week ahead full of very happy sewing and I'll see you soon. Bye.